Why did you decline Congress President Sonia Gandhi's invite to join the party?
Problem in my mind, the doubt I would say, was the constitutional proprietary and alignment of EAG vis-a-vis the existing setup.
Now, the impression we got was that former Congress President Rahul Gandhi kept his distance from these discussions. How true is that?
No, it's not true.
You are in a way making a critique of the government of Nitish Kumar, that he has been overrated as a pro-development leader?
I'm nobody to say whether he is overrated or not.
We have with us Mr. Prashant Kishor, who set off a buzz with his announcement that he's turning the page and he's launching this new initiative which he calls Jan Suraj. So I'll begin by asking you about Jan Suraj. What is Jan Suraj? What does it entail? How do you plan to go to the people? Who are going to be your colleagues in this initiative?
Well, what I have said through the tweet is self-explanatory, in the sense that the first two lines I have tried to sum up the last 10 years of my journey, basically telling what made me do what I did and how the journey has been. Then the second part of the tweet is about the future course. There the key words to my mind are the issues and the path. I've talked about going to the people who are the real masters in democracy, and to know about the issues and the path. Path to Jan Suraj. Jan Suraj, to our mind, is good governance that is acceptable and that is of the people. It's by the people, of the people, for the people, the good governance from the people's point of view, and that is why we are calling it Jan Suraj. And the third point is Shuruaat Bihar se, is the location or the state from where we want to start. It also means that it is not going to be limited to Bihar, but of course, it is clear that we are going to be starting it from Bihar.
Right. So, is this initiative political in nature, a precursor to making a political plunge, forming a political outfit as is being speculated?
Frankly, I would not know. I have to go to the people, and only after spending weeks and months, probably a year or so, I would be able to tell that what people expect me to do, whether the issues which I get to know, and that is why I said the path to address those issues have to come from my interactions and engagement with people on the ground. So, if it entails, if it results into a party, so be it, but it is quite possible that it does not result into a party.
Okay. Do you have any future course of action in mind after this exercise of meeting the people, getting to know about the issues of governance? After this exercise is over, do you have any future course of action in mind?
No, I take one step at a time. What I announced previously is by 2nd of May 2022, I would decide what I am going to do. This is following my announcement on 2nd of May 2021 on the Bengal result day, Bengal and Tamil Nadu result day, when I shared that I would cease to do what I have been doing previously for last 10 odd years. So, at this stage, what the clarity I have is that I am going to the people to understand the issues in the path, possible path, way forward, and then we take a step forward after completing this. There is not one off exercise, it is not a campaign as many are seeing. It could, and I do not have a fixed time frame as of now, that how much time it will take. We are talking about a state of the size, say Bihar, which is fairly large. You are talking about more than 120 million people. So, I do not know how much time it will take. If we think that we have enough information or or the input to make a decision which could be the next step in 6 months, so be it. Or if it takes 1 year, so we follow the path for next 1 year.
Okay. You also said in your tweet that you are turning the page. So does it mean that the chapter relating to your vocation as a political consultant, that is over? And what do we call you now? A political leader, a political activist? I mean, how would you describe yourself?
Well,
as
you can
now?
call me a political activist. When I say turning the page, in my head I have turned the page on 21st, on 2nd of May 2021, as I said, on the result day of Bengal and Tamil Nadu. But for the public at large, I continue to be the same person doing the same thing. And I don't necessarily find fault with them, is because in the interim, this last 1 year, I was not doing something defined and easily understandable to the vast majority of those who are interested in knowing what I'm doing. So, possibly they continue to see me through the lenses what they have seen me in previous years. But in my mind, I have ceased to exist to in that role a year back. What you call me is, yeah, it's a political activist. I don't know, maybe the nomenclature will also evolve.
Right. I want to ask you, why did you choose Bihar to begin this initiative? Like you said, Shuruaat Bihar se, the beginning has been made in Bihar. Why Bihar? Has it to do something with the fact that this is your home state?
No. See, when we wanted to do this, the first idea was to do it in some of the most underdeveloped parts of India. So, naturally, we looked at many areas across India, and then we realized that probably Bihar, being one of the most underdeveloped, but politically very I would say awakened state, there can't be a bigger or better challenge than what Bihar brings on the table, both in terms of the politics and the governance. So, and also the fact that I am from here, one would like to believe that I would have a little bit more connect or understanding of the state than any other in India. So, that might have played a part, but as a concept, largely we have looked at that let us try this out in some of the most underdeveloped parts of the country.
Bihar continues to be amongst the most backward states in the country. Who do you hold responsible for this? The leaders, the parties and the governments that the state has had so far, or has it something to do with the kind of society that the state has? It's extremely feudal and there is vast social inequality. What do you think is responsible for this state?
Definitely, you can't put the blame on the society. Bihar has got some of the brightest minds, some of the most enterprising and hardworking people here. So, if there is something wrong, it has to be with the government or the system. See, those who are looking at Bihar and its development or lack of it has to look at a little bit long term. If you closely follow the developmental path of Bihar, as a state, Bihar has been underperforming other states literally since 1967 onwards. A phase of what I call political instability between 1967 up until Laluji became the chief minister. Bihar has seen more than 20 governments, chief ministers coming and going. So, that unstable political phase would have played its part. Then came the era of Laluji, which many would call the dark years for Bihar. Though the supporters of Laluji would say that even though the development on some of the parameters might not be good or as people expected, they worked on the social empowerment and they have given the voice to the people. Be as it is, that era did play its part in further pushing Bihar down the rank on developmental side. The more intriguing part is the era which is seen to be when Bihar has been doing well, which is under the Nitish Kumar's government. Yes, during Nitish government's time, Bihar has seen some development, at least in terms of roads, electricity and on many other fronts. But again, if you look at hard data, Bihar on a relative basis remains one of the most poor and deprived states of India. So, say for example, take per capita income or per capita GDP or per capita expenditure or per capita electricity consumption, on all and many other key developmental indicators, Bihar's rank at the beginning of Nitish Kumar's taking over as the chief minister, which was the end of Laluji's era or at least his government, and what it is today is same. So, Bihar was number 28th on per capita income basis in 2004, and unfortunately, it continues to be number 28th even today, despite all the so called development
of making
Nitish
a critique
Kumar.
of the government of Nitish Kumar, that he has been overrated as a pro-development
No,
leader.
I'm nobody to say whether he is overrated or not. What I am saying is, when Bihar has been the relative underperformer for many years, probably decades. So, the kind of transformative growth and development that the state needs to make up for the lost time or make up for the time when we lagged behind others is not to be seen, especially in the latter part of Nitish Kumar's government. If you see the first 5 or 6 years, the Bihar was able to close some gaps on some indicators, but if you look at overall 14-15 years of his tenure, Bihar has not been able to close gaps on any critical developmental indicator vis-a-vis other states, and that is the reality.
Why do you think it is happening? Is he getting distracted by political compulsions of running a coalition government with the BJP?
No, see, why it is happening, that the question should be asked to Mr. Nitish Kumar, but as an outside observer, I think you can clearly put Nitish Kumar's regime in two parts. One, the first 7-8 years of stable Nitish Kumar's, the JDU and BJP alliance, when there was political stability and probably they were trying to do whatever it was required on their part. Then came the second phase post say 2012 onwards, when there was some issues between the two coalition partners of that time, that led to ultimately both parties separating. Then Nitish ji running a government on his own for a couple of years, then the change of guard post 2014 defeat in Lok Sabha, then him making a new formation with RJD, then turning back again to BJP. So, all this political upheaval would have probably have taken the toll on the governance. There is no two way about it.
You worked with him for some time, you were an advisor to him, you were a member of the JDU. Why did things not work out between you and
So,
Nitish
I have
Kumar?
worked with Nitish Kumar in two phases. One, in 2015, when I was helping him in the elections, which he fought as part of what we called at that time Mahagathbandhan, the JDU RJD Congress alliance, and there was a massive victory for Mahagathbandhan, if you recall, in 2015. Following which, yes, he appointed me as an advisor, but I was not there to do the job. And the second part, I joined JDU in 2018-19, and I was working with the party till we separated on the issue of CA and RC. Now, if your question is why did I separate, because in the party's internal forums and the party's stated position on CA and RC till that time was that we are opposed to the idea, we are opposed to this legislation. but all of a sudden party voted in favor of it in parliament. When I met the leadership of JDU, which is at that time was Nitish Kumar, he assured that even though party has voted in favor of CA and NRC, they are not going to implement it in Bihar. But that sounded to me a bit odd. If you are not convinced with it and you do not want to do it in your state or the state which you are, which is under your rule, why would you go and vote in parliament? And then I would have gone public, and actually I did went on public criticizing party's move, which they in their wisdom found as going as an indiscipline or going beyond the set framework of party, and in their wisdom they decided to expel me. So, good luck to them.
A way of providing good governance is to be in power yourself, form government. So, would contesting elections be an option for you in the near future?
If we are in democracy and you are a political activist, if situations so arise, there is no way to say that no, we cannot. I would not be contesting an election, but it's not. I do not see it in the like immediate horizon. There is no election right now, where I have to take a decision whether I am going to fight or not. But as a possibility, yes.
Okay. So, the Jan Suraj announcement comes on the back of a very long drawn out and intensive discussion which you had with the Congress with regard to how to revive the party and your role in the process of reviving the Congress. So, obviously you were very keen to join the Congress and be a stakeholder in the revival of the party. So, was that plan A for you as you made the switch from being a political consultant?
See, if you see the time gap between the decision with Congress and the announcement here, would tell you that I was always clear in my mind that I would be doing this thing. I would announce this going to the people bit in Bihar. The Congress's plan in many ways would have incorporated this as well. If we were to agree, to join, if I were to agree to join Congress and work on what we jointly agreed as the way forward for next few years, that would have also entailed a very people centric approach in Bihar in many other states. So, even though it did not work out with Congress the way many would have expected, Bihar, the Bihar plan, which is completely in my hands, I have gone ahead with that plan.
Why did you decline Congress President Sonia Gandhi's invite to join the party and be a member of the Empowered Action Group for 2024?
Well, I have explained this in a couple of earlier interviews. When we started the discussion about this idea or the plan or the blueprint, whatever you want to call it, the only condition that I put on the table was that the plan should be discussed and agreed upon. Every aspect of the plan should be discussed and agreed upon before I formally joined the party. That was the only condition that was put on the table, and I must thank the Congress leadership. They followed it up with all sincerity and seriousness, as it is in the public domain. Almost 5 days, literally the entire Congress top leadership or the group which the Congress president constituted, we sat together, we went over the plan in great detail, and at the end of it, the group felt that most of what I was suggesting or I was putting on the table were issues that they were comfortable taking it forward. So, on that aspect there has been a complete alignment or agreement, both in terms of the approach and the actual outcome of it. The difference, if any, was about how to execute the plan. To execute the plan, Congress leadership came with this idea of having an empowered action group, EAG, which would be made of some people, 4 or 5, the number is not defined, and they invited me to be part of the EAG. On face of it, there is no problem in being part of the EAG and taking responsibility to execute the plan. The problem in my mind, the doubt I would say, was the constitutional proprietary and alignment of EAG vis-a-vis the existing setup. In my mind, EAG would be formed, as I understood, with by an executive order of the Congress President, probably even validated or approved by the CWC, and would be made up with 4 or 5 people who would be nominated to the group. Now, as per my understanding of Congress constitution, there is no provision for a long term existence of such groups, which is mandated to take such far reaching decisions and operationalize it on day to day basis. And when I looked at it and thought over it, I realized that many of the existing bodies and arms and positions that are there because of the constitution, the party's constitutions puts them in responsibility of certain job, they would probably end up being at odds with what EAG would be doing. I have explained this earlier by giving examples. Say for example, one of the recommendation which was agreed upon was to revamp the Congress's organization in roughly about 8,000 block and town committees. Now, to undertake such big work, it would have taken 2 years for EAG to do that. The problem with an EAG that is not constitutionally backed or fully aligned with the existing organizational setup is that if EAG were to appoint those block committees and town committees, what would be the role of say General Secretary organization, which has the mandate to do this job as per the Congress constitution. So, either EAG would just become a recommending body which will put the recommendation and then General Secretary organization would execute it, or if EAG starts appointing, then what General Secretary organization would do. And such things led to, at least gave in my mind, I thought would lead to contradictions and a lot of push and pull. So, I thought it would not be a very successful initiative, and that is why I declined.
So, you are surprised that the Congress came up with this solution that let us form an EAG to implement these suggestions?
No, I was not surprised because the idea was always that no one individual can take responsibility for the kind of work or the recommendation that was part of the so called blueprint. So, it was always to be a group. They called it EAG, even better because it is empowered and action both together. But only I in my wisdom would have thought that they would have an arrangement of having the group that has got the constitutional backing to allow it to carry out the work that they expected this group to do. But I might be wrong, let us see, because the PK or no PK, there is EAG, they have announced to form the EAG, and we must see how the group works, and if they are able to execute what we have recommended or they have agreed, good luck to Congress. I would be the happiest person. So, we have to wait and watch how the EAG is constituted, how they functions, and how much of that, how much they are able to execute what was recommended, and I am happy to be proven wrong in my assessment.
Okay. Did you take up your concerns with regard to the EAG with the leadership of the Congress President or Priyanka Gandhi or Rahul Gandhi or
No,
any
it
of
was
the top
not
leaders?
about the concern. They put the offer on the table. I shared the concern which I am sharing with you. They did not make a counter offer, and so we decided that okay, let's close this amicably, and there is no hard feelings. As I told you that I'm somebody who would like to see if EAG as and when it is gets constituted and they start executing some of things, if they are successful, I am happy to be proven wrong. There is no problem in it. See, this whole idea that one Prashant Kishor coming and changing things in Congress anyway was I think was complete I would say hyped up issue. No one individual can change things in a party as big as Congress. I could have played one small little part in the whole scheme of thing, and I am sure Congress has got many more people who are far more experienced and capable than me, who can still do the job. I had an issue with, in my mind, the way it is that whether EAG would have enough legs to carry out the transformational reform as we call it, but if they are able to do it, hats off to them, and I would be learning things that yes, this could be done, and I was wrong in my assessment.
Yeah. It is being said that maybe you were looking for a role where you could work in an individual capacity and not as part of a group, have a free hand and report directly to the Congress president.
No, actually,
was that your expectation?
No, but I am telling you, actually, it was my recommendation that it has to be a group, because you don't want to take such big responsibility on your head, which is simply not possible. So, that whole idea that I wanted to be doing this individually versus being a part of a group has got no legs. The second part is this idea of reporting to Congress president. As per the EAG and the announcement they have made, EAG would be reporting to Congress president. So, there is no issue on that as well. So, I just do not know where this is coming from. I am telling you the only problem I have or I had at that point of time was that there is no constitutional sanctity or proprietary attached to what EAG would be doing.
Okay. AICC Media Department head Randeep Surjewala, in his tweet where he spoke about the offer that was made to you, he said you were being given a defined responsibility. What was that defined responsibility?
Yeah,
was it to look after elections as you had indicated?
This
in
is
your
very,
tweet?
very clear that within EAG, as I said, if you are a group and there are 5 things to be done, you would have 1 or 2 or half or probably more than half of the responsibility on your head, and that the word he used is defined, and which is I think a fair description of what was put on the table. As part of EAG, I would have a defined responsibility. That is what the expectation was, and what they have said is perfectly all right. This is what actually the case was.
Did you also make any suggestions with regard to the leadership framework of the Congress? Rahul Gandhi as head of the parliamentary party, and either Sonia Gandhi or Priyanka Gandhi as the Congress president?
Well, the recommendation or the blueprint or the suggestion would encompass everything: leadership, alliance, parties, ideologies, their ideological positioning, the functioning, election, everything. So, yes, it was. But what was said and discussed privately, there is no way I can discuss it publicly. So, if you are asking me about an individual and what role or possible suggestions were made about their future role, I think I would not be able to comment on it. But it is fair to assume that I would have discussed all those issues with the people who were needed to know those suggestions, and then it was the call of the party.
Here I want to ask you whether you feel the Congress can survive with a non-Gandhi at the helm. Having a non-Gandhi president, is that a viable option for the party?
No, that's for the party to decide, but if as an outside observer, you would see its party with such a long history and legacy, bulk of their existence has been with presidents who were non-Gandhis.
Yeah.
So, I do not see a reason why party cannot survive, but this is not, I am nobody to make a suggestion whether they should have A or B as Congress president. That is for the party and the leaders of the party to decide, not for me.
You invested a lot of effort, time and energy into discussing how to revive the Congress. Do you feel that the party can offer a credible opposition to the BJP in the next Lok Sabha elections, considering that it has had such a poor record of winning elections in the recent past, in the recent years?
Well, theoretically, the answer would be yes, but if you, as you rightly said, if you look at last 10 years, it is no brainer that they haven't done very well electorally and otherwise, and to most people, I would say almost 100% people would agree that the present, the way they have gone about it in last 10 years, with the same approach, it is very unlikely that they are going to get very different results.
What makes you so interested in seeing the Congress revive?
No, it is not a question of interest. It is in the interest of the country, and more importantly in the interest of the democracy, that we have a strong opposition. Even the die-hard supporters of BJP would, I think, would agree that having a strong, vibrant opposition is in the interest of the country. So, it is not about the personal interest.
Do you find yourself ideologically in sync with the Congress in some way?
No, it's not, see, it's not about when I am trying to work, till the time I have not joined the party, there is no, the question of ideological, being in ideological sync or not in sync does not arise. All I am saying is, yes, given the option, I would have worked with them, because as an individual, I see a strong Congress or a strong opposition is in the interest of democracy and the nation as a whole.
Did you approach the party with your proposal on how to revive the party, or were you invited to offer suggestions?
See, this is such a frivolous thing to talk, because see, first of all, we have been in talks for years now. The first discussion would have happened pre-COVID era. Then there was a much more structured, intense discussion post Bengal. Then there was this round of discussion post these 5 state election results. So, I do not know how much we should spend time who approached what, but it is fair to assume that Congress, being such a large party, I am nobody. So, if I would have gone to them and said, okay, to my mind this is how things could be taken forward, I have no ego in accepting, or I do not feel belittled by accepting or someone telling me that okay, it is you who went to Congress, so be it. What is the big deal? I am never claiming that they came to me. If you feel happy about it as a Congress leader or a supporter, that actually he came, it's fine, fair enough, I went.
Right. So, from all the meetings that you had recently with Congress leaders, do you feel that they are alive to the problems that the party faces, and they have the will to bring about a change?
Well, in all my interaction, the fact is, as far as I have said this before also, that as far as the assessment of the present situation is concerned, there was 100% agreement. As far as the solution or the way forward, the road ahead is concerned, there was near 100% agreement on the broad contours of what was suggested. It was, the only difference was about the way to execute, and there also there was complete agreement from both sides that it has to be a group, it has to be at the highest level reporting directly or working directly under the oversight and guidance of Congress President. The only difference, I cannot repeat it enough, was about the constitutional sanction to that group, which they thought the executive order of the Congress President approved by the CWC would be enough. In my opinion, that would not be enough.
And how receptive was the Congress President to your suggestions? What kind of a feedback did you get from her?
No, of course, unless Congress President would be in agreement with what was suggested, she would not constitute a group of some of her senior most colleagues to spend that much time and energy on reviewing and engaging, interacting with something or somebody who she was not in agreement. It's like, it's a common sense.
Now, the impression we got was that former Congress President Rahul Gandhi kept his distance from these discussions. How true is that?
No, it's not true.
How involved was he in these?
He was as involved as he could have been. At least this is what my personal experience has been. Let's not put the blame on an individual just because something has not worked out. No, he was engaged. It was much before post this, in this round, much before I met Congress President. I met him twice or thrice. Then even when we had this meeting with Congress President, he was always there. It was only when a group was constituted to look at the proposal in much greater detail, he was not there, but that decision was also made jointly by everyone around the table. So, now putting the blame on him or the equation, so called equation or between him and me is a complete speculative thing. I do not think he was withdrawn or not engaged or did not approve.
In your tweet, when you spoke about declining the invitation from the Congress, you said the party needs leadership and collective will to fix the problems. So, do you feel that the party has a leadership problem and lack of collective will to carry out whatever reforms are necessary?
No, you are reading part of my tweet. What I said, more than me, more than a Prashant Kishor or somebody like Prashant Kishor, they need the leadership and the collective. See, Congress, why I said collective will is because it's such a big party with more than 100 years of history, so many elements, so many interest groups. Unless there is a collective will and the changes that are required, unless there is a collective will, it would never happen. And that is why I wrote that it requires the lead. It's not to say that they don't have a leadership. I am saying if you want to bring the deep rooted structural, if you want to change or do something about the deep rooted structural problems and do it and undertake transformational reform, it requires leadership and collective will.
Right. Through these meetings, were you able to bridge the trust deficit which appeared to exist between you and the Congress? There was a mutual trust deficit. You were also not very comfortable after having worked with them in UP in 2017.
No,
as
I have been on record on this, that post Bengal it didn't work out because both me and them could not take the leap of faith that was probably required on our part to undertake such things. But post the results of these 5 states, I must tell they were very, very open and they were very supportive. They did everything that was required on their part. I took that leap of faith as well from my side, but at the end probably, but for this small issue, it would have got materialized. It would have materialized.
Some Congress leaders were very uncomfortable with your visit to Hyderabad to meet Telangana Chief Minister KCR, and it was during that visit that the deal between TRS and IPAC was signed. So, some Congress leaders even came out in the open to criticize this, even as they said that even as you were talking to the Congress, how could you go and meet a party which is the Congress's rival?
See, that was not an issue, has been clarified by none less than the Mr. P. Chidambaram on record, and the fact that the offer to me to join Congress and become EAG was made post my visit to Hyderabad, where this whole TRS thing was discussed. So, see, I have worked with different parties in the past, and the organization which I used to work with, they continue to work with many parties. This is the fact which was always known to Congress leaders and their top leadership, and after knowing that, they would have engaged. So, it was not a new information as far as the Congress leadership is concerned, and they did not tell me directly or indirectly that this is an issue. So, to my mind, it was not something that played out was a factor in the final outcome.
Is the Congress chapter closed?
I don't know. Right now, of course, it's closed in the sense that we have said goodbye, thank you. But in life, what happens, you never know. I have come and I am doing what I think I could and should be doing in Bihar, and I am sure Congress party is doing what they think is right thing for them to do.
You have tried to project yourself as an entity distinct from IPAC in the recent past, but people don't buy that. How would you define your association with IPAC right now?
So, say when you start something, of course, and have been associated with it for almost 10 years, there is always this risk or the reality that people will see it like IPAC and Prashant Kishor together. But the fact of the matter is, even when I was working with IPAC, I was never a shareholder, owner, director, employee or employer in IPAC. So, my role, if anything, has been that of somebody who has started, founder, mentor, whatever you want to call it. But I never held a position in IPAC, a formal legal position. But that is not to say that I was not involved in doing what IPAC has been doing over the last 10 years. But post Bengal, I have made a public announcement that I am letting it go, giving it to the colleagues who have worked with me in IPAC for them to carry on and take it forward, while I go out and think what I want to do in my life. And this interim period of 1 year, before I decided and made a formal announcement that this is what I am going to do in Bihar and beyond, I see why people would continue to relate me with IPAC, because I was not doing anything else, at least in the eyes of vast majority of public. So, you would continue to believe that I am still working and I was still working with IPAC, but that is not what I think. It's undermining the caliber and contribution of the colleagues who are now running IPAC, because they are quite capable to run it on their own, and if they need some help, and if I am called in a meeting here or there, or if I am called for a kind of interaction within IPAC or outside, that is fair, that is going to be always there. But I do not run IPAC on day-to-day basis, and that fact, at least in my mind, has been made clear on 2nd of May 2021.
So, did the IPAC question also come up for discussion when you were in negotiations with the Congress?
Yes, it was brought up by a couple of people, and it was clarified to my mind to their satisfaction. They understood this thing, that I am a separate individual and IPAC on its own is a separate entity. There could be some residual issue here and there, which they would have liked to discuss maybe if I would have joined Congress, but I do not think in my discussion that played a major part. We would not have spent even 15 minutes discussing this IPAC issue out of those hours and hours which we spend discussing this blueprint and the way forward.
Now, had you joined the Congress, how would you have reconciled that with your association with leaders like Mamata Banerjee or Telangana Chief Minister KCR?
So, if I would have joined Congress, goes without saying that you would have started working within the framework of what party would have decided vis-a-vis each leader or party. That goes without saying, that if you are part of a party, you have to work within the framework of what party decides.